When I was young, I had, like I say earlier, it's interesting to have, the best thing to have older siblings is the fact that uh, you can, take the books or whatever they have. And my father usually was very strict on us, like reading a lot. We had to read a lot. And he was like, whenever he was going on a trip, he would bring us some books. But there are so many books in the house, that sometimes I wasn't interested to read at all. I had my cousin who was a teacher, education, a teacher, and when we were young, like when I was a child, actually, um, she was taking care of me. She had like a strict way to, you know, um, take care, to raise in the way because my parents were traveling often, you know. So most of the time, my brother and I, because my older sister and my younger sister, they were living in Gabon, they were living in France a long time. So my brother and me, we were often in Libreville. We were in Libreville at the time, and my parents were traveling often. So then we asked my cousin, who was a teacher, because my father liked her a lot because of that aspect of her, teaching. She would come to take care of us. And she was young, but she was already, she was in a school of, to become a teacher, education program. And she was, so she has rules. Uh, don't do this, don't do that. It's time to have a snack. It's time to, you have a time to play, entertainment, play outside. And then there was a time to do your homework. And usually the time of break, it was about reading. Okay, so I started reading at school, but it was more reinforced in my home because of my father and my cousin. She had a very big important role in the way that when my father wasn't there, because my father wasn't there often, but you could feel his presence at home. I don't know how to say that. He had a very strong presence in the way that even if my father wasn't home, he was calling, he was like making sure that everything was, Um, so when my cousin left, because she had graduated, she started working and she had her life. Um, I grew up, I started going to high school later, and there are so many books. And my sister would come sometimes in the summer. Oh, and then often we also go to visit her, and my sisters in France and my uncles, all the family there. We had books. I mean, books, so many books at home. And most of them were my sister because my father was buying books. Then my brother would take books, and me, I will have books. But it was too many that I didn't even took time to read. So I was sometimes being there at home, doing nothing, maybe doing crochet, crochet, and sometimes going, sometimes around, you know. Um, my neighbor, it was a couple. My neighbor was a lady with her husband, uh, a retired diplomat. He was a diplomat, retired, and they travel a lot, for the job. And she had books also in her home from her children because her children were already adult now. They were living abroad in Europe, in America. They were living there, so they left books. So there were so many books. Um, she saw me one day walking, and like she told me, "You don't do anything like something special." I said, "Not really." She told me, "You don't read a lot." I say, "Sometimes," and she told me, "You should be reading." And I say, "Okay." It wasn't something I would love reading. Then she told me, "Yeah, you should be reading." And she told me, "You can come to my home tomorrow and I will show you what you can start reading. But I didn't tell her that I had so many books in my home already. So I was like, oh, okay. You have to be polite, you know. Yeah. And my mom sometimes was talking to her. So yeah, I had to be polite. I went there to her home in the afternoon. She was there. And she showed me first bedroom of her children, who are already adult now, adult. It was books. I was like, oh no, like in my home. She told me you can start reading with the youngest, books. I started reading one. She gave me one book, then two books. Then I started reading and reading and reading and reading. It couldn't stop. Because books for me became like a passion at some point of my life. Like you get initiated, and start reading. It was like the author, like I say, Julian Green say, books. I don't know how to translate it in English because most of this quote I know them in French. Books are like window through you escape. Okay, it's like window. He say that. I don't know how he say that in English, but in French he say word to word that books are like windows through you escape. It's like you are taking in another world. Okay, you are taken in another world. So that's basically what books are. And it became like that. It became addictive to the point I was reading so much. And I started learning a lot from authors. And among those authors, I remember my sister had a book that she would had some of the books she would recommend me to read at the time, but I didn't really care, just say. But now, then I became really like used to read. Now I finished all the books she had in her home. Then I was like, I need to read more. Then I went to my home where there were so many books and I started reading. And I fell into one of the books that my sister recommended me to read. Albert Cohen. Albert Cohen. I always remember that. Albert Cohen, I mean, there are so many, very interesting books. Albert Cohen was a Jewish author. He's Jewish, Swiss Jewish author, And he told a story that I like. I didn't, not like, but touched me a lot. Touched me a lot. And the books was about his experience of anti-Semitism. He was a child of 10 years old when it happened. That traumatic experience happened to him. Albert Cohen was 10 years old. On his 10th birthday, his mom gave him money so he could go buy some stuff for himself. He went outside and he went to a street vendor. The thing happened, okay, the situation, the story, what happened, it really happened to him because he really taught him a lot on humankind, I will say. So Albert Cohen went outside with the money his mom gave him for his 10th birthday. He could, buy something, not really expensive stuff for kids. Candies, maybe all this that kids like. He went outside and he saw a street vendor who was very nice to kids and there were people around, adult people, kids and such. And he was also excited. He went to the street vendor. Like it happened in the south of France, in Marseille. Marseille in France. When he went there, when he approached, also like the other, kids approached him, the street vendor saw him, look at him, and saw that Albert Cohen didn't look like the others. And what happened? He saw his feature, his dark hair, his black eyes, the feature of a Jewish child. He started telling him words, cursing him, spitting, like being word, mean word to a child. To, I'm not going to tell you words here because it was very horrible, and like to remind him that he was Jewish. The child never had this kind of situation happen to him. Never had it. No, that experience in his life. I was the first time. He was traumatized. And other people around didn't even intervene, like, no, stop talking to a child like that. No, they were quiet, others were laughing. It tells you a lot about human nature. A child, a victim of anti-Semitism, just because he was Jewish, and people being around saying nothing, adult people being there, because an adult man cursing a child, it's really like, when you have racism, a black child being cursed because he's black, and people being around doing nothing, not even protecting the child. Albert Cohen came out of the situation very traumatized. He started walking, wandering the street, asking questions that what is brotherhood, what is life? And he realized that he was scared. Yeah, of course he was scared. And I don't know how his parent took it, because I understand as a parent, it can be very difficult to not to know what to do in such situation. And I think the scene happened after probably World War, I don't know, World War II, I don't know. And it's shocking. And as a parent, you don't know how to explain that to a child, that you'll be hate for being how you were born. Can you explain that? Can you explain to a child you're gonna be hate because you are black? It just doesn't make any sense. But that's how life is. It's quite interesting to see such things happening, and how people can be passive. Other people can be passive. Usually, people used to say, "Oh, other people, children don't do that." Other people, but other people can be worse sometimes than children. Worse, and I really mean it. Worse. Okay. So that story really shocked me when I read the book. You are taken into another world, and it reminded me of a story of a girl that I read when I was in primary school. I mean, in elementary school, you say elementary school now. Okay, the school before, classes before high school. I remember that very much. My father was bringing usually some magazine for young people, and those magazines that he was bringing often home was to educate, to learn in general, not from our knowledge, no, no basic knowledge, general knowledge of the world and history, geography, science, stuff like that. That's the kind of magazine was. So I remember that very much. And I remember one of the chapter was a little girl's name, Anne Frank. I really remember that. Anne Frank. She was sitting on the desk and she seemed kind of sad. And her name was written big capital letter, Anne Frank. And I didn't understand because I was a child, of course. It was like, why do they talk about a child? And I started reading a little bit. It was a child who was living in a hiding place somewhere in Netherlands. It still didn't make any sense to me because I was in elementary school. Why a child would be hiding? Why? Then later on, when I went to high school, we learned World War One and World War Two. That's when I started understanding what really happened to this girl whose name was Anne Frank. Sorry, my son is just there. So Anne Frank was a little girl who was writing her diary, you know, and she was hiding. I understand it later because after we studied that in high school, World War One and Two, and the between wars, the period between wars. I understood why. And that's when you start learning about Nazism, Hitler. You start to learn about fascism in Italy with Mussolini. You start learning about all this movement. Okay, and you understand that later on, you have people who were persecuted because of their race or who they were, and that's when I learned about concentration camp. One of those was the Auschwitz concentration camp, I think in Poland, I think. And Anne Frank actually flee or left Germany because there were movement of Nazism and who were against Jewish people, obviously. And Anne Frank and her father Otto had to find a new life in Netherlands. There, he didn't last for long because, yeah, they were persecuted because they were Jewish. And sometimes even people who were helping Jewish people to hide and to live were also caught. And then they were caught at the end, even though they were hiding. It was very sad when I put all the pieces together about her life and why she was writing a diary that was asked by, I think, the government. I don't know. She wrote a diary. And I like it because me too, I like writing diary a lot. So they were caught. They were, when I say caught, it's like they were found and they were taken to concentration camps. Concentration camp, what happened there, I try to put all the stuff, knowledge together. They were separating women, okay, and men. And people who were found to be not strong enough for labor work will be sent to gas chambers. Horrible. And Anne Frank and her sister and her mom were sent on the women's side. Just thinking about it is very sad. And her father on the other side. Yeah, of course, they couldn't survive this situation. But I remember when I saw some pictures of people, of Jewish people who were found, like almost no flesh on the bones, like, after, I think, the end of the war, I think, they were free from concentration camp. You wonder how human can do such things to other human, and then you understand why. Sometimes I like to talk about this quote of Thomas Hobbes, who say, "Men are worth to men." And yes, we are worth to men because when you see also the situation of slavery, it's just like you don't understand why humankind can hurt, can do something to the other human. Okay, you don't understand that. And yeah, and yeah, they died. The only survivor was their father, who later came back to the place where they were hiding, and there were nothing left there. It's horrible. And today, you shocked me personally. I'm sure that we still talk about anti-Semitism on the news. It's just like you feel like have have we as humankind have we learned from our past history, or are we still doing the same thing over and over? No. And that was something I've learned through the books. Albert Cohen just remind me that, you know, we are human. And when a child aggressively talk like that, our role as adult or whoever we are we have to take position, because in time of trouble or in time of persecution, if you are quiet, like Desmond Tutu say, it's like you agree with the oppressor, you agree with the oppressor, and they said nothing. The child was, you know. Okay, so thank you for watching this first video. I hope to see you in the next, maybe tomorrow, and I will tell you stories about my home country when I was young. You know, I will tell you about story of my home country when I was young. Things that happened. I remember that, and I'm still laughing about it. It's not funny, but don't take things too seriously sometimes. And I will share with you a little bit more books that I read. I found was really interesting. And yes, thank you for watching.